Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Internet. Welcome. Thanks for staying for the Talkback. The Tempest is one of my favorite plays, and I think I say that every time because I like them all. But the Tempest just sort of strikes you as such an amazingly beautiful and ultimately Shakespearean theatrical adventure, and it's such a pleasure to work with this group of actors today for a few hours on it, and it's such a pleasure to have Glenn Fleshler here tonight. Glenn and I did Shakespeare together in like the mid-90s.
1994.
You have the year 94, thank you. I wasn't sure it was 93. We were in Kilgore, Texas, which is a little oil town in East Texas that has a Shakespeare festival that's still running today. So if you're passing through, they're still going, and they do very, very, very good shows. It was one of my first jobs I ever had. Probably not yours. You probably
not quite, but
yeah,
it was early. It was early days.
It was early. You'd worked there before.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were very young, and now we're very old. We aged faster. No. We had a great time, and I remember feeling very excited to be hired by this place because I'd been in New York for a few months and I hadn't really gone anywhere. So it was nice to get a job, and it was a summer job, and it was Love's Labor's Lost.
Yep.
And King Lear, and get ready for it, Man of La Mancha. Because the festival had recently decided, as I recall, that they were going to try to do musicals.
Yeah, it was like the first or second one.
Right. And so Glenn and I think you had a bigger part in that than I did. But
were you a muleteer?
I was a muleteer.
I was Pedro, the head muleteer.
You were the head.
I had a whip. It was pretty good. Pretty fun.
You had a whip. That's right.
I had a whip.
And our costumes were made of little leather things. They weren't I felt like we were a little bit out of an S&M club.
Well,
that's what we sort of looked like. And if you don't mind, I'm going to keep going on this because I think it might be amusing to these people here, and then we'll move on. The director decided to have the concept be that we all stay on stage the whole time. Remember that?
I didn't until you said it.
And when the director says that, and you're in a play that you already don't really want to be in, we were like, the whole time. Okay. So we were very bad, and some of us would sneak off stage because we were in the background. And I think you might have had a card game going on.
What?
In the green room? I was sneaking cigarettes on the loading dock, and then we'd sneak back on just in time for the next thing we had to do. Anyway, it was really fun, and it was a summer of discovering Shakespeare at an early age after having some grad school training, and it was just one of those summers that was very, very special. I was so glad to reunite with you recently, and I thought, Glenn should play Prospero, of course. Oh my God, yes, please. And thank you for saying yes.
I mean, it sent me into a panic because I was saying to some of these guys, I was like, I don't really understand this play. So I've been diving into it for the last couple of weeks, but it's been really fun. It's really challenging.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a lot of words. But you do get some breaks in the play.
Yeah. Breaks.
Yeah.
Shakespeare always built in breaks.
He did.
He was good with that.
Yeah, he did, because he knew they needed them, even back then. Glenn, when did you first fall into love or at least interest in Shakespeare? Were you a young?
We had these some old anthologies, in little volumes, either the histories, the tragedies, the comedies. My brother was given or something. There were these old volumes, and I just maybe junior high school I would read them aloud. I didn't know what I was saying, but I remember liking the sound.
Oh yeah.
And then I started to study a couple of them in school and liked them. But it wasn't until college that I did productions of Shakespeare.
Right.
And really studied it and took it in the English department as well as doing plays in the theater department.
Right.
That kind of thing. And then
where was that?
Undergrad was in Albany.
Oh right.
And then at NYU, I furthered my study, which I was at NYU, I think, when we did those plays.
Yes.
Yeah, I was still in school.
Yes,
so
that's right.
I did I started at Texas Shakes a couple summers before, and then I went back and played Richard III, which is the first like real meaty role I got to do professionally.
Right.
And then I missed a year, I think. I was doing grad school, and then they called me to come that summer. That was my last summer.
That's right.
Yeah. But
everyone was talking about your Richard III, I remember.
Well, I came back and did Edmund in King Lear, and it's tough after you've played like the ultimate bad guy of all time to then do like a slightly lesser bad guy. It was a little anticlimactic, but it was fun.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about the bad guy thing? Because you've done a lot of that. I don't know if you know about Glenn's TV and film career, but it's been a lot of bad guys.
A lot of heavies, yes.
How do you feel about it?
How do I feel about it? You got to know where your bread is buttered.
Yeah.
That is definitely where my bread is buttered.
Yeah.
Anytime I get an opportunity to do something else, I welcome that. But,
right.
And I try to be somewhat selective.
Right.
Sometimes I'll read a thing and I'll go, I've done this a million times. But I'm always looking for something new, some new angle, some new way to kind of justify the behavior. And so I try to find projects where there's some kind of energy or rhythm or something different that I feel like I haven't, really explored.
Right.
So it still keeps me going. I won't do something if I think like there's no challenge for me here. For the most part, I don't want to do things that don't interest me. But there's a lot of great villain parts. That's the lucky thing.
And you know what?
They're often juicy parts.
Right. And when you're an actor, these are the parts you want to play, right? I mean, these are the parts you really love. Like, what's better than playing a villain? I mean, it's just so much fun.
Once people get used to hating you, and you give over to it. I think some actors don't want to do that. They want to be the hero, and they want to be. For me, I gave that up a long time ago.
That's right.
I don't need to be.
That's right. And have you ever been in the Tempest before?
I did one other reading of Prospero.
Yeah.
Similar amount of time to this. I don't even know if we had as much rehearsal as we had today.
Yeah.
So that was my first kind of feeling it out. That was, 10 years ago or so.
Right.
So it's fun to come back to it. But no, it's not a play I was ever in a production of.
Yeah.
It's odd. I've done about 30 productions of Shakespeare, and some of them I've done 4 or 5 times, and some of them I've never been in Hamlet, oddly. So there's some obvious ones that... In fact, I have a joke with a good friend of mine who I went to grad school with, because I sent him one year in my place to Kilgore, Texas, because they asked me to come, and I was like, you should look at my friend. I don't think I want to go back this year. And part of it was they were doing Midsummer Night's Dream, which is a play that I've always avoided. And everybody loves it, and they do it all the time, but I always thought, the costume's going to be just rough. And so at my friend's wedding, who went and played Oberon in my place, I made a video of him, and a friend of mine helped edit it with me, and it was him like with leaves, and like muscles drawn into a body stocking. And the background of the video we made, they were going, "If I was king of the forest," as Oberon, because I was like, I made the right choice.
Yeah, you did. Yes, I have worn those costumes. I know what that is all about. What do you think after today and the sort of last couple of weeks of thinking about Prospero and the play? Do you have anything that sort of jumped out at you from this time through? Is there anything that you thought, I didn't know about that before, or I like that, or...
I just kept, trying to approach it from new directions, open it up to possibilities.
Right.
And the thing I kept coming back to is the thing that I think people have said forever, which is like it's Shakespeare's last play, and it's a bit of farewell to the theater and to his art, and I tried to kind of open up to other possibilities and realities, but I just kept coming back to that. And of course, as actors, that's where we meet him, is, in that place where he is in control through his art, and he is obsessed with it, and he decides to let it go for the betterment of his family and his family's future, and in the name of redemption and forgiving the people who come on the aisle that had wronged him.
Right.
And I think that's probably what it was. Shakespeare did walk away. He went and retired back to Stratford, and that he's dealing with that his incredible power and saying goodbye to it and opening up to some other sort of life.
Yeah, I think that's I always ending up there too when I deal with this play, and I thought you did that last speech so beautifully when you relinquish your power so well.
Well, that's for me. That was where the redemption is for him, because there's no avoiding. And again, in trying to look at it different ways, trying to warm up some of it and find humor and all these things, it kept coming back to this control. And he is just exercising massive control over all these people.
Right.
Talk about going back to the idea of not being liked all the time. As an actor, I felt like, well, there's no, you can't really pussyfoot around it. Even, the stuff with Ariel reminding her where she's been and how he rescued her and that she owes him this service. It still comes out. It's rough, it's harsh.
Yeah, he's harsh.
The more I tried to soft pedal it, the more I kept coming back to, no, this is how he controls people. His daughter, Caliban, Ariel, and the redemption is found there in just his deep love of his art and the study and the discoveries that he's made and his incredible power and the relinquishment of that. That is just where, for me, he is redeemed, and it allowed me to kind of give over to that controlling earlier part of the play.
Right, which is so tricky for an actor, because the character is like ba-bam, 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 just like not in a good mood, not happy, not anything, like just he's on an angry. He's angry, right?
Well,
I mean, it's hard to play anger for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to just play anger. But also, he's like on the verge of something incredible, which is all the people who've wronged him. Like, how many of us could put ourselves in those shoes of coming face to face with all the people who've done you wrong and who are the reason your life is the way it is, for better and worse. And he has this chance. And he can do anything with it, and he decides to allow forgiveness in.
Right. Well, for lack of we're not doing a full production today, but I did think we found a bit of that journey, if I may say, and then that moment when Ariel's like, well, I would forgive them if I happened to be, one of you people, and it was just a nice moment tonight, and it was like,
that came to me
boom,
late. Yeah.
Everything turns right there. In a
sense, I thought as much as possible. It's very quick to let it hinge on that, but that he doesn't necessarily know he's going to forgive anybody.
Right.
And I came to it late, not knowing the play that well, but eventually landed there. That it is in that comment of Ariel's that she would have all this feeling, even though she's not human. That I must, of course, have that human compassion for these people as well.
Right. And I guess it elevates him, right? I mean, it makes us like him, and it makes us understand him.
Well, the trap with him is that because he's so in control, is that he knows everything.
Right.
And I guess that's where I started from. And that was the great discovery, was that, oh no, he can actually be surprised by Ariel and therefore not have the end game in sight, even though he knows he's going to try to control them. And what it takes, that speech where I got down on my knees, you get a little picture of actually what it takes out of him to summon these things.
Right.
Much the way, when you're doing your best work as an artist, whatever kind of art you execute, it does take something out of you, and it has to cost you in order for it to be worthwhile. And so that's where he goes. I mean, that's why that speech is there, I guess. I suppose it's ripped from Metamorphoses.
Right.
There's a lot of verbatim speech there that he kind of stole.
It's very
but that's
close.
just kind of to start it off. But then it goes to these wild places, executions of his power.
Right. In the first reading we did on Zoom a little bit ago, I was said to the cast, like, this whole play always feels to me like an acid trip, and it still does. I mean, it gets so weird as the hallucinations start happening and the people start getting trapped in weird places, and Prospero's running it and Ariel's running it, but it just gets so strange. And then even inside that weirdness, there are all these like great human human moments that happen. Yeah, it's great that way. And I just felt like we found some cool moments today, even though we had a very abbreviated rehearsal period. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about the Tempest that they'd like to ask us about? Yeah, or just say.
I found it very interesting that you're able to give such a nuanced and thoughtful performance under such constrained circumstances. It was enormous poise, and I never caught you acting. And I believed you. I believed you the entire time. I thought you had great insight into the part, and it was really moving. Thank you.
There's somebody back there.
Is there a hand up?
Yeah.
The lights are in our eyes, so. Oh, okay. Hi. Yeah. Yes.
So on what this woman has just said, and what you had said was that you weren't terribly familiar with the play, but yet at the very end, you were able to summon up tears. I could see them in your eyes from here. Where did that come from?
Well, like I said, the more I worked on that section of the play, the more I just kind of connected to that. I mean, you never know in the given moment what's going to happen. And of course, there is a later moment where he talks about Gonzalo's tears and that he's shedding them as well. So it fit in nicely. But for me, that sort of moment only comes from the enormity of what he's experiencing. You know, that it's a reversal, which to me is one of the great powers that Shakespeare had. Even within one line of dialogue, to contain multitudes, and that the power of the language is in the shifts, in the changes, and they're very sharp. And for me, my experience of doing Shakespeare was always that the best strategy was to go really far in one direction to find the next transition, as opposed to try to ease your way through. So I thought, and I'd never done it the way I did it tonight, but in the moment with you all there, I got carried away with the language. But taking it that far in terms of the power of what he was doing and just exercising that led me to that emotional transition of what it costs to break my staff and bury my book and give up that life.
Well, the language sustains it, and your performance sustains it.
It'll hold whatever you can bring to it. That's what's great about Shakespeare.
Absolutely.
It will hold whatever you can bring, but you want to come by it as honestly as you can, of course.
Yeah. And those sudden turns are so, they're so much fun for an actor to do, you know, when you have to do them.
I was reading
really
a little
bit.
bit.
They can be hard, but they can also be fun and enjoyable to suddenly take a left turn at Albuquerque when Shakespeare tells you to, and you just have to do it.
What I read about as I was reading about the play, which I'd sort of forgotten, not having done Shakespeare for several years now, is that the later plays he really changed his style, and this time through I was much more aware of that the earlier plays have so much irony and so much opposition within a line, this versus that, and this versus that, and he does it over and over again throughout his language, throughout the speeches. And this play he does much less of that. It's a much kind of sparer sort of language. It's as though he kind of like tossed away some tricks, like he wanted to change his bag of tricks or let something new out. I don't know how far back that goes with the last few plays, I guess what people call the romances, if they're all like that, but certainly this play, I was like, wow, it really is different than, you know, if you look at an early history play or something.
It's very true. That's so true. Are there any other thoughts that anybody has? Yeah, or questions? Yeah.
Yes. Had you intended from the beginning? Do you think that Prospero had intended from the beginning to forgive them, or is it only at that moment when Ariel?
I mean, you could play it that way, but that was what I was exploring tonight. I would say was that he he really comes to it, or at least the final decision about that, understanding about that, does come from Ariel. So that's something, it's always more interesting when something happens in the moment on stage rather than something that's predetermined. So to find that was important, because I was putting pressure on myself as I was working on this in the recent weeks to have to come on with so much, because so much has happened before the play has started, that he's discovered that his enemies are nearby, and then he's conjured up this whole storm and this whole plan to do all this stuff and maybe marry Miranda to Ferdinand, which I think he has to have some idea of early on. There's just so much, and so to know that I'm going to break my staff, I'm going to forgive them, all of this stuff, I shed some of that knowledge for myself, to that obligation to bring quite so much on so that I could discover more during the course of the play as much as possible. There is quite a bit of backstory and exposition that you have to kind of wrap your arms around, but that's always, and it's a lesson, unfortunately, you have to learn again and again and again, because it's easy to take for granted. But when you find those things, like, oh, I can have this happen in front of an audience, I can go through this change, like that's what we want to see in our characters, is transformation, people learning.
Does anybody else have a comment? Yes, hi.
Yeah, I was wondering about Caliban.
Yeah.
Because he's left on the island, right?
Yeah.
Does Prospero really forgive Caliban, or he just cuts that part of his personality off?
Yeah, I don't know. Our we were doing a stage reading, so we didn't really make a decision about that. But I don't know, Glenn. What do you think?
From just this experience of it, I didn't give it a lot of thought ahead of time. I have seen it done different ways in different productions, where he's sort of more like Ariel and sort of set free in this way, and gets to have this more kind of epiphany of some kind. But just feeling the language tonight, and as we've been working on it, he has nothing good to say about Caliban, and he offers him pretty much nothing. He says, "Go clean my room,
right,
if you want me to forgive you." That's about it. I mean, even in that last scene, the things that he says to Alonso about Caliban are very, very unflattering. So that is one place where he doesn't seem to soften, at least in the text. But of course, you could interpret it different ways, and I think directors have had fun with what is next for Caliban and where he ends up.
Absolutely.
Inherits the whole island.
Well, he does, yes.
Well,
And
he
who knows?
wanted to
Maybe
be king.
Stefano and Trinculo stay with him, and they have a little community that they start on the island. I mean, they all go off together back to the house and do something. We don't know what they're doing back there, but they're hanging out. Who knows what plans they come up with?
It's an open-ended question.
Yeah. So it's fun to think about, I think. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Does anybody else have another?
Hello, we're Prince of Naples.
Excuse me, we have one more comment.
One quick thing, really quick, Glenn. It was a pleasure to share the stage with you this evening. I wanted to ask you about knowing where your bread is buttered. Kind of because just along, obviously pursuing the same career path, looking for things that'll kind of, pad the resume, but I want to know, how do you find such nuance in some of these, like, quote, bad guys that you play? How do you find the differences between someone like what you played on True Detective versus someone like tonight? Just looking like...
Well, everybody has a different backstory, so it really, for me, I've always been very text-based. Maybe that comes from some of my Shakespeare training, but it's also the acting training I had was a lot about listening, and that includes not only listening to your fellow actor or listening to your director, but particularly for me, listening to the writing. Listening, which means reading again and again and again and again, digging deeper and deeper, and you find little gems when you do that. And each character is different. They are in a different circumstance, so you look to find that which makes them human, and you look for those little things that do humanize them, that maybe redeem them. Sometimes you can't find redemption, but you can find a reason. You can create a backstory, a childhood. A lot of times it comes back to a child imagining the childhood of that character. And sometimes, it's very painful because you got to go to very dark places. But like Brad was saying, it is ultimately really fun to get to act that out. Hopefully we don't do that too much in our real life, so it's a place to put all that, the feelings that we all have. And I always find that it's actually very healthy to get to have a repository for all the negative stuff, to put it into Shakespeare's language or into a film shoot or whatever.
Oh, I find the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Very healthy.
So it's in there. You just dig for it. You just dig and dig and dig and keep looking and imagining and using that what if thing that actors have.
That's great. Thank you all so much. We'll see you in 2024. The Resident Acting Company signing off. Good night.